3 weeks ago now, I decided to take the biggest risk of my life and buy the UK's cheapest Mini John Cooper Works. But as you would have seen in the last video, we couldn't get it started after fixing the hidden damage. But what you're about to see is me scratching my head for over a week straight, seeing if this engine's seized.
You can see here it clearly says the car does not run on the auction listing, but it was a risk I was willing to take. Moving on, to give me a quick break from the engine, I decided to whip on the brand new second-hand crash panel that I got off eBay with just 2 bent panels that are easily replaceable. I decided to chuck that on. Removing them was super easy. The crash bar at the front is just 4 13mm bolts, and the top cross member is just 6 T30s each side, comes straight off. So this is where we're at the moment. All this lower crash section from the new slam panel is okay. Just got to replace these 2 parts, which we'll get done. We still haven't got the engine started. We've got some random codes, so I've got to look into that. But apart from that, we're getting somewhere. So back to trying to get this car started. It was now time to just start ruling out what could be causing this. First thing I went to was power. The original battery was still in the car. It's probably been sat at the salvage auction for months, and a lot of the codes to do with discharge. So went out, bought a new battery, hooked it up, and this is what happened. Right, new battery in, clutch down. So after that disappointment, what did Mr. I'm Not a Mechanic do next? First thing I could think of was the starter motor. Get it off, get it on the floor and test it. Really easy to get off. It was 3 bolts to the block, and they were E-bolts, and then 2 nuts holding on the electrical cables. This is like day 3 now of trying to get this car to turn over. Just put that battery on, as you've seen. Had a bit more of a tick, then I smelt a bit of burning, and then we've got no tick at all from the starter or anything. I had a fault come up on the dash, but nothing coming up on the code reader. So then I've come out and I've just took the starter motor off. So now it's actually time to test the starter motor, and we'll see. Now to test the actual starter, I put power straight to the starter and then ground it. You can see it's coming out but not actually spinning. So as you would have just seen, looks like this starter's gone. Don't know why, but at least we can rule that out, that this might be potentially the problem. So cut to me with a new starter. New starter motor acquired. Hopefully this is going to solve our problem. Fingers crossed, because if it's not this, we're getting into some deep money territory. So fingers crossed. Let's get fitting it. So the starter motor just slots back in, 3 bolts just like taking it off, and then the electrical connections. Simple as that. Right, the new starter's in. Codes are clear apart from the steering. Let's try it. It was at this moment when my stomach dropped and I thought, shit, this is seized. As you would have just seen, it didn't start with the new starter. So, first thing I did was try to crank it manually. I should have tried that earlier, and it didn't. It's 4 E-bolts. They're like inverted Torx, can't think of them off the top of my head. Found a socket that goes over them all and grips them nicely. Put quite a bit of force. It should have turned over personally, I think. Tomorrow I'm going to take the spark plugs out so there's no compression on the cylinders. Try again. If it turns over, great, we'll get some lube going through it, some oil, turn it over, go from there. Let's be honest, it's probably not that. So the content is going to be unreal. We're going to be potentially rebuilding an engine, finding out what went wrong. Not ideal, but look, it's a project. We expect bad things, expect the worst, you'll never be disappointed. So yeah, we'll see where we go from here. So it is the next day, and as you would have just seen in the last clip, I've just ripped these spark plugs out. And last night I got on the phone to some very knowledgeable people, and they said, yeah, get them spark plugs out, try the crank. If you can't, obviously I've got the start motor off, and that exposes the flywheel. I've just got a small pry bar in, and I can actually turn the flywheel. It's awkward because of the angles and stuff, but it moves. So that is a very good sign that this engine shouldn't be seized, because at the top, you can see through the oil cap, the camshafts are actually ever so slightly moving. Obviously ratios from the bottom of the flywheel to the top is very different. So it's a very little movement, but it shows that it is moving. So fingers crossed, we might have not a seized engine. So that's good. But yeah, where we go from here, I'm not sure. I need to do some research.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, what you just saw was the engine that I thought was seized cranking for the first time with the plugs out, yes, but it's progress. So now it's time to rip the plugs back in and see if we can get started. Come on, this has to be the one. I've changed clothes because I'm about to go out. This is progress. This is definitely, we're heading in the right direction. Tomorrow, I'm going to try and get it cranking again, just with no spark. I'm going to try and disconnect the fuel. And fingers crossed, we can get it started.
Stop, sir.
I don't even know what day it is now. All I know is it's Sunday. Mate Ben's just come round and we're pretty positive it is the starter motor. We just made two start motors into one, hoping it was a good one, but it didn't work because I think the starter motor I put on, before the engine was actually freed up, it burned that starter motor out. So, or it could have been a dud, we don't know. So we need another starter motor, and it should move because we've had this engine spinning a fair few times now. We continue.
Yep. And again.
So as you would have just heard there, it sounded like the starter was fine, and all of a sudden it was starting to lose power and got worse and worse. So the next night we decided to take the starter motor off the block, but keep it on the wires from the car and hook up its own earth from the starter motor back to the battery to eliminate any earthing problems. And as you can see, that starter motor has no problems. The way it flicked then shows it's got enough poke. So this was it. Cleaned up the face of the starter motor, put it back in, added an extra earth just to be safe for the first time, and sent it for its first crank. And after that crank, it was time to put the plugs in. Come on.
Come on! That's gonna go. It's got to. Oh, God. Ready? Yes! Come on! Come on! Come on! It's on! It's on! Yes! Yes!
That's so loud.
And there we go. The UK's cheapest Mini has started for the first time. I'll be honest, we're not actually too sure what made it start. Shout out Jake. He did some research, and something about shaking the steering wheel on some fairly similar issue things helped start. It's as if like it might be a steering lock, like immobiliser, or like rocking the car slightly helps the starter, like a bit like the old school method where you hit it with a hammer or something. Either way, you could hear like the fuel was starting to come in. You heard like a bit of an explosion, and then all of a sudden it just went. You would have seen from my reaction, I was over the moon. It's 9:30, and it was so loud starting, so it wasn't ideal, but it started. So I'm gonna have a celebratory beer, maybe a few, and I can go and enjoy my holiday now with nothing on my mind about this car not starting. So thank you for watching. Thanks for the support on both of the last videos. It's been great. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.